Welcome aboard on this August morning, September the 2nd. My session is the first session, and a little bit about myself. I'm a qualified rank holder chartered accountant from India, and I have worked primarily with rating agencies and big fours in about 10 countries and worked on projects up to 20 billion US dollars. So right now I'm a CFO with a company in Abu Dhabi. And I'm very active on the startups ecosystem also, where I'm on the steering committee of the UAE government's, startup incubation authority. So having said that, my session is today about from number crunchers to business partners. So CFOs today are no longer just number crunchers or as a support function or admin function or a back function. They are in fact leading in a lot of respects. And in some companies, they are second to the CEO himself, right? So let me begin by sharing my screen and we can talk about the session today. So this is the title page, Number Crunchers to Business Partners, Enhancing Business Performance in Today's VUCA World. VUCA is the short acronym for Volatile, Uncertain, Complex, and Ambiguous World. So a short presentation disclaimer, it's purely for illustrative purpose. Views expressed herein are my personal opinions and not represent any professional body's views. And audience to exercise your own professional judgment before relying upon anything that is presented here in terms of research or views, and no intentions to expressly violate any copyrights, as the primary objective here is knowledge sharing. Let's set the expectation for today's presentation. So it's an evolving primer. By no means it's an end to what can be presented in such a short time. So it's just an introduction. I've tried to make it jargon-free in terms of it being less technical. There's a pictorial representation which adds to the aesthetics and appeal. There are fresher perspectives which are easy to understand and apply. So what is this? Is it a blank screen or something has gone wrong? No. So this is like a clean slate view. So there's a Latin word called tabula rasa, which means we free ourselves with any preconceived ideas or beliefs or notions. So I would request each one of the participants to come on board this session with a clean state of mind. So that's tabula rasa. So let's begin from now on. So finance today is a vast subject. Even if we have a symposium or a seminar for 1 week or a month continuous without a break, we cannot cover it in full breadth. So by no means we can cover the entirety. So what you see here is the iceberg. So the berg at the bottom of the sea level is the bigger component. What I can present here today is just like a tip of the iceberg, but it will be my endeavor to see how I can bring some thought-provoking ideas. So let's for a moment take a back step and then talk about certain experiences in today's world. So how can we print unlimited money? How can we have negative interest rates? How can the asset prices be at their all-time highs during such unprecedented COVID times? How can derivatives drive the underlying assets value? How can enabling platforms value be higher than the fulfilling businesses themselves? Are there any real risk-free interest rates? Can intermediaries continue to exist in the future world? How can some of the resourceful and the most rich nations by God's boundaries be lagging so behind? Can we stop this avatar of money taking shape from metal to paper currency, which is fiat, from paper to plastic, which is all the debit and credit cards that we use today, from plastic to digital? So can we stop this avatar of money from metal to paper to plastic and now to digital? Let's try to explore some of these thoughts and reflect upon the future possibilities. In addition to my reflection on how can something that goes higher keeps on going higher, defying all laws of gravity, Newton's law of gravity. How can some business offer 90% discounts and have billions of dollars of market capitalization? So mind-boggling, right? So we can't cover everything, but that in a nutshell shows you about what's a VUCA world and what are all possible in a VUCA world. So there are no real experts in a VUCA world. Yeah. So finance function is no longer, like I said, it's just number crunching. It's at the center stage. So on this chart, you see that an integrated business composition is made of HR, IT, sales, marketing, operations, and finance. Finance in itself being strategic financial planning, capital planning, expenses, allocations, scorecards like balance scorecards, profit and loss, balance sheets, cash flow, valuations, deal making, M&A, investment banking, and so on and so forth. It's an ocean. So it used to be one of the function components, but right now finance is at the center stage because any and everything that you talk about, even let's say, for example, we talk about social media, it's got its socio-economic form, which is thriving in the form of, let's say, Facebook. To the extent that any company or any product new launch, if they don't have their Facebook page, which is supposed to be a friends network, is going to be less successful. So yeah, in terms of the outreach that the social media has got today, but the social media on its own will not get its value, being one of the highest companies in terms of market capitalization. It has to be socio-economic, and that underpins the importance of finance function. So what am I trying to say? Finance is at the center stage. So technology and finance have become imperatives. So anything that is rightly and timely tech-enabled at the inception or at the beginning, and anything that has the right financial blueprint at the end will become successful in terms of these being key imperatives, but they are not exhaustive. They are the minimum. They are like the taken for granted. And if you have the right tech enablement at inception, and if you have the final financial blueprint at the end in planning, everything else in between will fall in place. So what is this everything else? It will be marketing, it will be operations, it will be legal, strategy, HR, yeah. So there's a means and there's an end. So this is how I look at finance. So it's an interplay of technology and finance. So these are the modern CFO traits that any CEO or any leading organization will look for as a minimum. Again, these are not exhaustive. So CFO is supposed to have a global reach. There's a big data explosion, and we'll cover that in depth going forward. A CFO is supposed to be tech savvy, and he should have exemplary people skills. Yeah, because people at the end of the day, along with the automated technologies in the form of artificial intelligence, will drive the organizations of future. So one of the subcomponents of today's topics is discussing about the economic opportunities of Africa. So I look at it as an evolving sort of landscape. So what I mean by that is it all began by USA, which is America, being the main superpower. That was like a century ago, right? And then the superpower sort of shifted from US to Europe, particularly Germany, France, and UK. And one example I could think of is the automobile industry, which started big time in US, and then the economic power sort of kind of shifted to Europe, the Western Europe. From Western Europe, it went to Japan, because then Japan, after the Second World War, did a lot of internal reorganization and became, today it's like the second largest economy in the world by its GDP. From Japan, the center of power shifted to China, and China in a lot of respects became, the go-to country for any form of back-end integration in terms of the world being manufactured out of China. From China, currently, we are seeing a big wave towards India because of the mass English-speaking young population, and it being a domestic thriving economy with a lot of talent, which is driving big corporations anyway in the world. My own personal take is the next 100 to 200 years would belong to Africa, leading up from India. So if you look at it this way on a global landscape, it's the number 7, or you can call it like a question mark. Yeah. So this number 7 is the world opportunity number curve as it has thrived or evolved over the last century. So what is Africa? Africa is the second largest continent. But to me, Africa, if I have to put an acronym to Africa, Africa is ancient as well as forward thinking. It is hugely resourceful. It is innovative in terms of a lot of new developments taking place in Africa. It is culturally very rich in its legacy, and it's the agricultural food basket of the world. So Africa, if we have to acronymize, it would be a good way of thinking about Africa. So what could be the key opportunities from an Africa perspective, right? So because a lot of people are unbanked, there's a lot of financial exclusion. I think we begin by saying that financial inclusion will be a key sort of business segment which will do very well in Africa in the future. Already we have got examples of the likes of M-Pesa in Kenya and others, which is like peer-to-peer money exchange. Energy or power, which is one of the biggest sort of bottlenecks or roadblocks in the growth of Africa. Huge mining rights because it's so resourceful, particularly the precious metals. It's an agrarian society, so agriculture will do very well here. We will come to the education of women in a bit, but let's talk about the potential of healthcare of people. And because Africa is having many countries, which by 2030 will be in the top 5 most populous countries, and I can think of Nigeria. So anything that is to do with the consumer goods will do very well in Africa. But the most important point is I was seeing a documentary by The Economist on Africa, and it said that the education of women would be inversely proportional to the population growth in Africa. If lesser and lesser women in Africa are educated, by the end of this century, 1 out of every 2 people in the world would be African. So I think in terms of educating women and educating the masses, if we can get the numbers right, if we can get the strategy right, Africa could be the next China, it could be the next India, it could be the next US. It could pretty well overtake every other superpower that we have known so far. Yeah. So this is by a natural resource or mineral resource or the bounties of nature kind of a map of Africa. So you can see everything and anything from the mineral ores to the precious metals to the food grains to uranium to crude oil. So it's huge, and the percentages range from 5% of the world to about 90% of the entire African production coming from singular sort of countries. So it's massive in terms of its land area, and it's massive in terms of the whole Africa opportunity. And this is a map of Africa having some 54, 55 odd countries. So if we have to understand Africa better, instead of going to all the 54 or 55 countries in terms of research, in terms of our presence or market expansion, I think 3 countries to me stand out in Africa as of now, and they are Nigeria, Egypt, and South Africa. So I call them like NESA, which is Nigeria, Egypt, South Africa, NESA. These 3 countries put together cover just 10% by land area of Africa. But these 3 countries contribute to 30% of the entire population of Africa. And these 3 countries, NESA, they contribute about 60% of the GDP of Africa. That's mind-boggling. And that kind of explains to us what could be the potential of other vast, naturally gifted sort of countries in Africa. And if everything in terms of strategy comes together, there's no stopping Africa. Now, the problem is the world maps that we saw earlier is not very simple. That's not how the world map is currently. It's a world map full of question marks, and that's where the VUCA world is happening. There are no real experts. There are no sort of precedents to what all we are experiencing, and the world is just, play by the ear or take it as it comes. So what are the fallacies in today's world? So the real values are less in terms of visibility, but in a VUCA world, you've got asset pricing, which are at their all-time highs, as an example, during such unprecedented COVID-19 times, which is unexplainable. And mainly it is because of excess liquidity. But when you talk about excess liquidity, how much can you print without backing up with the gold standard, right? There are hypes in terms of information technology, biotech, the BRICS economy, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, the e-commerce sort of bubble. Platform value, what do you mean by platform value? So any enabling business, be it Airbnb, be it Uber, is a platform value, but I always struggle to understand how a platform value's market capitalization can be bigger as an industry, I would say, as can be bigger than the fulfillment industry or the manufacturing industry, right? There's a lot of FOMO in the market, which is fear of missing out. And there's so much of ambiguity and complexity because of the sheer pace of change. You know, the rapidity of the change that we see around us kills a lot of experience, and lot of knowledge goes sort of obsolete very quick. So this is the world that we are in today. So as a substratum bridge, there are excesses. So excesses, I've sort of alphabetized the thing by saying X. We have to go from excesses to Y's. We have to question the rationale. We have to identify with the logic. We have to come on the common page and then move forward. So this is a VUCA world, and VUCA is, again, you know, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So, and the volatility is now not restricted to only derivatives or equity. Even the bond markets or the currency market have huge volatility. There's uncertainty because there's a lack of ability to foresee what major changes might come, because there's so much happening at such a fast pace. There's complexity. So the proliferation and increasing complexity of new financial instruments and regulation to deal with increasingly complex markets, moving in ways experts have never seen before. So they are unprecedented. They are ambiguous in terms of what will happen, what's the best course of action. That's a resultant feeling, and that's like a residual in the whole VUCA acronym. So this is in a very simplistic sort of manner where you can have the meanings of each of this. I quickly read for you. Volatility is the nature and dynamics of change. Uncertainty is the lack of predictability. Complexity is the multiplicity of forces and the confounding of issues. Ambiguity is sheer haziness of reality, which the, you know, intermittent sort of cause and effect confusion. So, and all these are like interplaying in an interdependent sort of fashion. So the top 10 threats to businesses today range from exchange rate volatility to the speed of technological change, availability of key skills, geopolitical uncertainty, over-regulation, policy paralysis or uncertainty. So these are like the top 10 threats accumulated by some surveys. But if we have a strategy with skills, we can kind of convert the meaning of VUCA to vision, understanding, clarity, and agility. So if we have vision, vision can lead us to agility. If we have proper understanding of a business, it can lead us to the right information at the right time. If we have clarity with this depth of understanding, it can lead to the right restructuring at the right time in terms of transformation. And if we have proper agility, this can lead to the right experimentation, which could lead to wisdom, which can be applied in multifarious sort of situations. If we want to understand the VUCA world from a drivers, effect, and demands perspective, this is how it is. So volatility will change the nature, dynamics, rate, and speed. The effects will be, there'll be unprecedented and unexplainable sort of risk and instability and flux in the market. Uncertainty will lead to paralysis due to data overload. Complexity will lead to unproductive dualities. And ambiguity will lead to problems in decision making, and it will hurt innovations. But VUCA from volatility can be converted to vision, uncertainty to understanding, complexity to clarity, and ambiguity to agility. But it would demand, if you take the action, if you have a wider understanding, if you have the key focus on being flexible and creative and innovative, and, you know, having a decision making which is having the buy-in of all the incumbents. So these are some strategies that we can develop in the VUCA world. So let's understand how we can reposition our business in a VUCA world. And I'm trying to cover this from like 8 aspects, so which is vanity to reality. There are some myth busters. There's data strategy and data maturity, artificial intelligence and machine learning, fintech, including blockchain, COVID-19 refocus, which is like a force uncontrollable, work from home strategy, and variabilization of business activities and the costs associated therewith. So let's begin with the first thing, which is vanity to reality in a VUCA world. So if you look at any business, top line is vanity, bottom line is actually sanity, and cash flows is reality. So a lot of businesses I've seen are focusing on the top line or the revenue growth, or a lot of market values are driven by the bottom line in terms of the price earnings ratio and all. But the intrinsic value of any business is arrived at from a cash flow perspective. So if we understand that cash flows are reality, this helps us better drive not only the business in terms of the products or services, but also in terms of the people practices, in terms of the market capitalization, and in terms of encashment of the right opportunity and a longer term growth perspective. If we look at a VUCA world business repositioning from a myth busters perspective, there are some myths that we need to sort of bust. So the focus on revenue should shift to gross margins or the operating margins, because there's no point in having a high revenue growth if your margins are bleeding or you're negative in your gross or operating margins. So growth is important, but being profitable, being in a profitable growth sort of scenario is more important. Profits are important, but cash flows are more important, like I said earlier. Cash is very important, but undeployed cash is a negative that any business should avoid, because cash sitting in your checking accounts or banking accounts is not going to earn you any interest. And once you deploy, but even to deploy, you should have a profitable sort of growth scenario. But generally speaking, deployed cash is more important than cash. And assets are important, but intangible assets and intellectual property rights, the likes of patents, trademarks, copyrights, trade secrets, brand name, HR, they are more important, I would say. So these are some myth busters as a reality check. So in a VUCA world, let's talk about data strategy and data maturity. So if you look at it, data is the aggregation of all and everything that we use today in terms of the digital world, which is all your connected devices. Data, when processed, becomes information. Information, when it is used in a trial and error format, and then we know what is right or wrong, what can work or not, what is applicable or what's not, becomes knowledge. And knowledge, when applied over a longer period of time, leads to wisdom. So this is like the data flow over a longer period of time. But in terms of the size of data, the traditional data size, if it was the size of this donut, now there's a data explosion, and more so because of it's been accentuated by the COVID-19 sort of experience. Also because a lot of content is getting consumed in form of videos, whether you call it work from home or you call it seminars like this, or you call it the proliferation of YouTube and the youngsters playing games online. So whichever way you look at it, there's a huge data explosion. So by one statistic, the world has added to itself the equivalent amount of data in the last 3 years that it used to have ever before 3 years from now. So that's the pace at which the data is exploding. And the reality is, if this pace of data is sort of seeming to a lot of you to be fast, then I can tell you that we are at the slowest pace of data explosion for the rest of our lives, right? So from that perspective, if data is only going to go gargantuan in this fashion, it's only a question of time before in a lot of repetitive sort of mundane tasks will have to be replaced by whether you call it automated chatbots or robotic process automation or machine learning or deep learning in the form of artificial intelligence. And quantum computing is anyway coming, because with such proliferation of data and the pace at which the data points and the circumstances change, quantum computing by 2025 will be in mass use. And when that strikes, the age of computers will really dawn in terms of it overtaking a lot of tasks that is within realms of possibility of what a human mind can take care of. So I've taken an example of a very advanced country in terms of its data maturity and its data sort of in depth that it has gone to. So in terms of strategy, organization, people, technology, and data, you can see the percentages. So for example, 85% people believe that they'll spend more on digital technologies in the next 3 years compared to today. 26% of people believe their employees do not have the enough skills or experience to execute digital transformation, and thereby, the consultants or the experienced people who can drive digital transformation will be in huge demand. So what are the most widely adopted technologies in this advanced country? So before that, let's look at the digital maturity score. So this score is just 5.1 on a scale of 1 to 10. But you see the most widely adopted technologies are RPA, which is at 79%, and advanced analytics, which is at 56%, even in such an advanced economy. The most significant threats for success, the most important one will be just the sheer too many priorities to take care of. Yeah. Let's look at it from artificial intelligence or machine learning. We already talked about it. I think it's a question of time before artificial intelligence will come, and there's nothing to get scared. AI will come in terms of supporting mankind better, so we can go to the next level. Yeah. And one of the instant things that comes to my mind in terms of the use case of artificial intelligence is the chatbots strategy. And most of the financial institutions, many large companies are already using chatbots to automate a lot of processes and then drive value, even to the extent of exchanging money by SMSs. Yeah. So fintech in a VUCA world. I think fintech today is everywhere. It's just a matter of the regulatory clearance, and it's just a matter of mass adoption, but there's no stopping this revolution. If we have to look at the evolution of modern fintech, it started from the first Diners Club card in 1950s to the world's first ATM installed by Barclays in around 1965 in London. Online telebanking started by the Nottingham Building Society in Britain in the 1980s. PayPal debuts in the late 90s. Alibaba creates the facial recognition technology, Smile to Pay. Bitcoin was launched in 2008, Satoshi Nakamoto, and so digital-only banks like N26, creates industry disruption in 2019. But the future is going to be more exciting in terms of this evolution map. So let's hope for the best. So these are some of the potential use cases of fintech, which will encompass what we hear and think and know about blockchain. There'll be, citizen IDs. There'll be cloud hostings, alternative credit scoring, digital KYC processes, RegTech, legal tech, cross-border remittances, peer-to-peer payments, and it's only going to balloon in terms of even its use cases. Yeah, fintech. So VUCA world in a COVID-19 refocus perspective, I think a lot of refocus will be done. Will need to be done. But if I want to cover it just at a surface level, I think a lot of businesses that were earlier focusing on growth started shifting from growth to wanting to make profits in this year. This is 2020 sort of refocus. A lot of businesses that wanted to make profits, they were now okay just to even have a revenue, right? Because a lot of people went out of business. From a business community, particularly in the SME businesses, particularly people which were only having 2 or 3 months of sort of working capital, operational capital. And then the focus shifted lately from generating revenue to surviving. So to be able to meet your expenses and liabilities. So this is how the focus has shifted in the aftermath of COVID-19 in 2020. If you look at it from a work from home strategy, a lot of businesses have announced that the vast majority, and some of them even for all of their staff, have announced a work from home strategy. So work from home can be very handy in terms of online data entry, even bookkeeping, transcription, freelance writing and editing. So I think in a lot of respects, a good chunk of percentage of people will be allowed to work from home. And we need to have, from an organization's perspective, the right empathy in these testing times. But this will open up a new segment in altogether. So your data privacy, your regulations around working from home, the rentals that will take a beating in terms of the commercial real estate. So a lot of interplaying factors, but work from home is coming. Yeah. Variabilization of whatever resources we can. So I have shown here one use case in terms of the IT expenses. So the traditional fixed cost model is giving way to SaaS models, software as a service, and variabilization of not just IT expenses. Any expense that is fixed will have to be revisited. And this is pay per use, or if you're growing, you will use more. If you're not growing, you'd like to take it by how your experience is in an evolving world. So I've nearly finished all these sort of viewpoints in terms of looking at a business repositioning in a VUCA world, which is from a reality check perspective to Mythbusters, data strategy and maturity, AI and ML, fintech and blockchain, COVID-19 refocus, WHS, which is work from home strategy, and variabilization of all fixed components. This is the last slide before I'm able to sort of close the session. But this is more of a harbinger of future prognosis in the financial technology space. So by 2026, the business value added by blockchain will perhaps grow to slightly over $360 billion and then surge, rocket, to more than $3.1 trillion by 2030. Successful banking-related chatbots interactions will grow by 31 times between now and the next 4 to 5 years. AI will power 95% of all the customer interaction within the next 5 to 10 years. And this is more of a present thing. What we can see is almost all the companies use some or the other form of a cloud sort of hosted application, which is more private, secure, cost-effective, and user-defined. Yeah. And digital payments, the total transaction value of digital payments in 2019 was a mind-boggling $4.1 trillion. In 2020, it's expected to go to $4.8 trillion. And this is only going to go way higher. But the key point here to note is a future of digital payments is peer-to-peer. This is not through traditional intermediaries, vastly regulated, archaic systems. It takes a long time. It costs you a lot. There's a lot of inefficiency in the system. So the future is going to be instant and near free, peer-to-peer. It just needs the right channel support and the right regulation. So with this, I come to the end of my short presentation. I wish I had a longer time to discuss more of my thought reflections, but I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Marcus Evans, and I'd like to thank Ms. Tarani for giving me this opportunity. And I hope and feel that I've done justice to the time allowed to me in terms of the topic that we have covered, which is the finance experts today are no longer just number crunchers. We are today strategic business partners, and how we can enhance business performance in today's VUCA world. So thank you again.